first graduated from high school, I started doing educational programs and semi-professional acting. I've toured with the Missoula Children's Theater through the Dakotas and Wyoming and Utah and southern Alberta, Canada. I've produced plays. I'm now the managing director of the Washington Shakespeare Festival and its main corps of actors, which is Shakespeare Northwest, out in the Northwest. And I've written plays and lectured and done Chautauqua, which is this style of performance, and done interactive history programs in schools since the early 80s as well. So it's all about involvement and engagement, and I take the same attitude to Shakespeare as I do with Franklin, is that it's much better to engage the audience than simply, I'm the actor, you are the audience, you are to sit there and observe me doing great art. I think that's silly. Yeah. Is that, no, I'm going to be in the audience, talking with you, touching, hiding behind you during the scene, or with Franklin, letting you ask me questions in the presentation, because I think it's just more fun for the audience. Is that, theater is like fire. Fire, you must have three things, and any fireman will tell you this. If you get rid of the fuel, the fire goes out. If you get rid of the heat, the fire goes out. If you get rid of the oxygen, the fire goes out. You no longer have fire. Theater is the same way. You must have the fuel, which is the script, the subject matter. For me, it's about all these years of studying Franklin and reading his letters and everybody else. You must have the heat, which is the performer, the presenter, and that's what I try and bring to it. My personality and my understanding of Franklin and my ability as an actor to become him in some degree. The third thing you must have for theater is air, and that can only be supplied by the audience. Now, films don't need an audience. A film will play, you can put on the movie The Titanic and have nobody viewing it. It's still going to run the same way. But an actor must have a living audience to bounce off of, to engage. If you watch any Shakespeare, and if a character, no matter how evil they are, how much they lie to everybody else, when Iago or Giacomo or Don John, any of these characters, they will lie to everybody on stage, but when they turn to the audience and talk to them, and their asides and their soliloquies, they always tell the truth. I hate the Moor, says Iago. But he's telling you, because the audience is the conscience of the play. That's what we have to make it sense to. Without the audience, there is no live theater. Without an audience, what I do doesn't exist. I must engage. And the audience feels like they've been part of the art. And that's what makes it so exciting. That's the thrilling part, is when they leave being changed. Because they feel, I've taken part in this. I've helped create it. And by their intelligent questions of me, then the performance is even better. And then everybody else goes, oh, I wish I thought of that. That's great that he asked that. There is nothing that compares to the joy of when an audience gets in on it and says, Dr. Franklin. So that they're playing in it as well. And it's such a marvelous enterprise, because, yes, we can affect. I understand that Vice President Joseph Biden is going to be here because of the memorial for Senator McGovern. And when you can ask him a question directly, you remember that meeting, you remember that. And it's important to know that our leaders are not separate. They're not demigods. They're humans just like us, doing the best that they can with the minimum that they have to do it with. But they can't do it without us. And when anybody comes in saying, we don't need you to do anything else other than fear, other than believe this terrible thing that I'm going to tell you, so therefore you'll fear whatever it is I want you to avoid. Don't trust that. Trust when they say, we need you to examine this issue and give us your best answer. That, to me, is a progressive idea that I want to see in life. And so that's why I do Franklin, because Franklin was an extremely progressive, very people-involving person who, and we still benefit from what he's doing. So I think it works. Like Shakespeare works after 400 years. It's still relating to us. No matter what question you have, or how a production, no matter how, he's talking about 400 years ago, he's still writing plays. He's the most done playwright in the world because his truths are self-evident. What they deal with, I would be willing to guess, as delightful as you are, you and your parents have not always gotten along. That you and your boyfriends, your girlfriends, and all your friends at school, there have been issues where people gossip behind your back. You've got Shakespeare. You've got Franklin. It's the human condition. And by examining the past from Shakespeare and Franklin, etc., back as far as you want to Socrates, etc., to Cicero, who I was reading a translation of his works, and he was advising a friend of his, be careful of overstating thy case, or thou shalt smite thy forehead with thy palm. He was talking about a head plant. I mean, so in ancient Rome, thousands of years ago, they were doing this. It's this, we are the same people. And so we can, when we're seeking to look to the future and what the heck we're going to do to improve ourselves, we give it our best effort, our best guess, and look to the past. This is what the Renaissance was about. This is what the Enlightenment was about, is giving our best guess based on the past. Franklin said, the ancients got it right. We just have to see how to make it fit. Well, it's fun. It's just, it's a huge blast. It's great to be able to take my art and art that I've developed and bring it out and help give people a good time, an important time, helping them, I'm hoping, realize that our future does not rely so much on us winning, but on us, my side, winning, but us, all of us, and recognizing it. And it's really, and I think I'm a better person when I'm in Franklin's mind. He's a much better thinker than I am. He's much more organized than I am, and and part of it is trying to get into his thought processes. As a person who loves Shakespeare and who tries to write in the period style, there's a real joy in putting your mind into somebody else's brain or system and being able to create in that. I've written 2 Shakespearean-style plays, and they are, by people who have their master's degree in comparative Renaissance literature. This is better than Shakespeare's worst. That's quite a compliment. Shakespeare wrote some less than stellar stuff, and if I'm better than that, I'm pretty much happy with that. That's pretty much the height. And so if we can look back at how these thinkers thought and understand them more, then it really shouldn't be that much harder to, for me to understand you. For a person, some whatever religion that they're, the people, this is the only way, and everybody else, my God tells me to kill you. He says, well, is there a way that we can find any type of middle ground on that? Is there a way that I can find my way out of this and to bring collaboration? Because I think peace and brotherhood and family is really the most important stuff. So anyway, so that's kind of lofty and esoteric. But really, what I get out of it is the ability to contribute, like Franklin, to be of use. I'm teaching at the Experimental College at the University of Washington. I'm now a guest lecturer at Skagit Valley College in Mount Vernon, which is where my Shakespeare Festival is centered. And like I said, I've been an educator since '73, going in, never in one school. I've always traveled from one to another and been a specialist to let the teacher, kind of sit back with their students and explore with them and prepare them for the information I'm about to present. And we do, like, for example, if I'm teaching about medieval history, we have hundreds of pounds of recreated armor. And we take it in and dump it on the floor, and I go in dressed as a medieval knight. And I'm Sir Gregory, and I do this, and you're my young squires. And then they get dressed in the armor, and they're wearing sometimes double their body weight. And for some of these kids, they're over 100 pounds the first times in their life because they're wearing a 40-pound suit of chain, and a helmet and stuff. And they understand in 30 seconds what would take me hours of lecture to try and get across to them about how it feels, what it smells like. They put it on, and they remember. And that's very fulfilling. And to use my chosen art of theater to bring about that change of awareness is really great. And the Chautauqua first-person presentation stuff is also something that I like to teach just in its skill and its own skill to other actors. Well, there's a good many things that he claimed were his own mistakes. When he first went to England, he was sort of engaged with Deborah Reed, and he only wrote her once in 18 months, and he regarded that as a mistake. an anerrata, he calls it, which is a printer's term for oops. And he should have written her more. When he came back, she had married. And through a series of interesting and somewhat comical circumstances, her husband had left and may have died, and so they set up as common law man and wife and produced 2 more children. And he brought a child in, William, his eldest son, from another relationship. We never are told who that is from. But to answer your question, so these are all interesting things and things that he regarded as mistakes. Him running away from his elder brother who taught him the printing trade, he recognized was wrong because he did break his agreement. But really, we're all bumpy. We all make mistakes and go up and down. No one, I mean, it's one of the things that worries me about your politicians is that I am, this person is a solid individual, nothing in this background. We all have errors. And I think we should embrace those and look at errors in the past not as things to be hidden, but things to recognize, I failed. And this is what I did to make it right. Franklin was a slave owner. He became an abolitionist. Jefferson was a slave owner, tried to institute laws, but to end slavery and failed. But at least he tried. I don't know if I would have the moxie to stand up to Franklin and go, you did this wrong, you didn't do enough here. I regard him as a much more effective person than I'll ever be. I've done the best I could do. But he, I think, benefited. I mean, the lightning rod, if he just invented the lightning rod and the grounding system, he saved millions, by chance now billions of lives, and gave us the information that brought electricity. What I would love to do is collaborate with him and see about making new things. Like I think something that, this is kind of science fiction-ish, but I think something that Franklin would do now is work at harnessing lightning. We have a huge generator of electricity. There are thousands of lightning strikes on the earth every day, but they're too powerful. We can't absorb them. We can collect rainwater. Why can't we collect electricity and use that to power our grid? And I think that's, my mind is that's something that Franklin would do. So as far as correcting him, I don't think I stand in tall enough shoes to do that. But as far as collaborating with him, I would love to do that. This, since I flew in, I did not bring a table. This is the table and the chairs provided by the church here, and the cruette and my little drinking glass here. I sometimes travel, but it's just I was so limited on space. I brought my marten fur cap, which Franklin wore when he first went to France. He set a fashion trend. He had to send back to America for his many marten. Marten is kind of like a squirrel. He had to send back for thousands, as many as could be sent over because it became such a fashion craze. I brought my penny whistle, I brought my walking stick and 13-star flag. But so that's all I was able to cram into my luggage because I didn't want to risk having any props sent to Florida. So I just brought what I could in my bag, and I brought so many wool shirts and stuff I didn't have room for much of anything else. But if as I do this more, then I'll probably pre-ship a package to a place with more material. And when I travel in my own area, then I normally bring my own chair and table, and I have a actual newspaper from the period that I sometimes bring with me, but I just couldn't risk this. But it's kind of neat for people to see an ad paper with an actual tax stamp on it. And this is not a replica. This is an actual newspaper, and you can still buy them. They're not all that horrendously expensive, but sometimes people like to see that, because especially with the Tea Partiers and stuff today, I mean, it's all about the taxes. No, it was never about the taxes. Taxes are a right, not an obligation. They're a right. It's the representation that was the issue. There was respect that Britain did not have for the second-class hoodlums, thugs, and thieves that they thought inhabited America. He was the first ambassador of the United States. He was the most famous American. He created the lightning rod, the glass harmonica, and several other innovations of Franklin stove, etc. He was world famous as a writer, as a politician, as an innovator, as a scientist, as an explorator. What's on his grave? Benjamin Franklin, printer. That's it.
He was a leather apron man. He died one of the richer men. He was the 15th child of 17 children born to his father. It took 2 wives to get there, 7 from the first, and then 10 from the second. And child and Abaya Folger with his 2 wives. And childbirth very hard on women, even more so than today. And although childbirth is still dangerous, I don't care what people say. Oh no, there's no danger. Why do you go to a hospital then? Anyway, sorry, political. He was all that. I'm hoping some good laughter. There's a lot of, he was quite the humorist. He wasn't quite as acerbic as Mark Twain, but he was a funny man, and he pointed out foibles like Twain does, and like not Oliver Twist, Dickens, of course, and other people of his time. He was a great reader. There was not a time he could remember from the age of 3 onward that he could not read. He was always reading and read the classics and Ovid and Cicero and Tacitus, etc. So they're going to get a little bit of that history, a little bit about where Franklin came from, the fact that he grew up not